The mess hall of the Coalition warship. Vigilant stars smelled like a dozen. Different worlds, each species had their own food, their own drinks, their own way of eating. The Valkyrie preferred their meals cold and raw. The Draxan liked everything burned almost ash, and the humans, well, the humans would eat just about anything if you gave them enough salt. Danny Cole sat alone at a small table near the window, watching the stars drift past. He was 23 years old and fresh out of training. This was his first real assignment, and he still could not believe he was actually in space, actually serving on a multi-species vessel, actually going to war. The Kef Dominion had been pushing into Coalition territory for months now. Everyone said a big battle was coming. Danny tried not to think about it too much. He was halfway through his meal when the shadow fell over him. Commander Thran was enormous, even for a Vel. He was big. His scales were dark blue, almost black, and they caught the light. Whenever he moved, his eyes were yellow and cold, like a predator sizing up something small and weak. Human, Fran said. It was not a greeting, it was more like an observation, the way someone might say insect or dirt. Danny swallowed hard. Commander Thran held up a small tablet. Danny recognized it immediately. It was his personal device, the one he kept in his locker, the one that held his books, his music, his family photos. We found this in the common area, Fran said, careless. I must have dropped it, Danny said, reaching for it. Thank you. For Fran pulled it back before Danny could grab it. A cold smile spread across his face. We had a look at your files, the commander said. Very interesting reading material. Other aliens were gathering now. A group of Draxan soldiers approached, their gray skin and black eyes making them look like living shadows. More Valkyrie came, too, drawn by the promise of entertainment. What is this? Asked a Draxan named Sussex, pointing at the tablet screen. What are these stories? Danny's stomach dropped. They had found his mythology collection. His grandmother had given it to him before he left Earth. It contained all the old stories, Greek myths, Norse legends, ties of heroes and monsters from every human culture. He read them whenever he felt homesick. These are myths, Danny said quietly. Old stories from Earth, stories. Thrawn laughed, and it was not a kind sound. Let me read one. He scrolled through the tablet, his yellow eyes scanning the text. The other aliens gathered closer, eager to hear. Here, Fran announced. Listen to this. A hero named Hercules killed a lion with his bare hands. Then he killed a monster with 9 heads. Then he held up the entire sky on his shoulders. He looked around at his audience, the entire sky with his shoulders. The aliens burst into laughter. What else? Kessex demanded, his dark eyes gleaming with amusement. Thran kept reading. A warrior named Achilles was invincible in battle. Arrows could not harm him, swords could not cut him. He killed thousands of enemies by himself. More laughter. Louder this time. And this one, Tran continued, clearly enjoying himself. 300 human soldiers held a mountain pass. Against an army of millions, they fought to the last man rather than surrender. Millions. One of the Valkyrie repeated. 300 against millions. Apparently, Thron said dryly. The mess hall was full of laughter now. Aliens from several different species had gathered to listen, and all of them found the stories hilarious. Danny sat frozen in his seat, his face burning With shame, your species actually believes this, Thrawn unasked, looking down at Dany with something between pity and contempt. These fantasies, these obvious lies, they are not lies, Dany said, but his voice came out weak. They are stories, they teach lessons, they inspire people to do what? Kessex asked mockingly. To fight lions with their hands, to hold up the sky. No, Dany tried to explain. They teach courage, they teach sacrifice. They show what humans are capable of. When what humans are capable of, Thrawn interrupted. He leaned down until his face was very close to Dany's. I will tell you what humans are capable of. Dying, that is what your species does best. You are small, you are weak, you have no claws, no armor, no venom. Bodies break easily, and you heal slowly. The only reason the Coalition allowed your species to join was because you breed quickly, and you are too stubborn to know when you were beaten. Dany said nothing. What could he say? These stories, Thrawn continued, gesturing at the tablet, are the dreams of a weak species. A species that must invent heroes because it cannot produce real ones. A species that tells ties of impossible victories because it has known so many real defeats. He tossed the tablet onto the table in front of Dany. It landed with a clatter. Enjoy your fantasies, little human, Thrawn said. When McKay come, we will see how much your myths protect you. The aliens drifted away, still chuckling among themselves. Dany heard fragments of their conversation as they left. Did you hear the one about the man who flew too close to the sun? What about the woman who turned people to stone with her eyes? Primitive species, primitive stories. Dany sat alone again, staring at his tablet. His appetite was gone. He wanted to go back to his quarters and hide. He wanted to call his grandmother and hear her voice. He wanted to be anywhere but here. He did not notice the woman watching from the corner of the mess hall. She was older, maybe 50 or 55. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her face was hard and weathered like stone that had been exposed to too many storms. There were scars on her hands and neck, old scars. The guy that came from violence thought she wore a simple uniform with no rank markings, just a name tag that read Sergeant Major Carla Bennett, retired. Carla had watched the entire scene in silence. She had seen the aliens mock the young human. She had heard them laugh at the old stories. She had watched Dany shrink under their contempt. She said nothing. She did nothing. She simply watched with dark eyes that revealed nothing of what she was thinking, but her hands resting on the table in front of her had slowly curled into fists that she remembered. Nexus Prime. She remembered the corridor. She remembered the screaming and the blood and the endless waves of enemies that kept coming no matter how many she killed. She remembered holding the line alone for 3 hours after everyone else was dead. The aliens thought human myths were fantasies. They thought stories of impossible courage were lies told by a weak species. They had no idea. Carla uncurled her fists and finished her meal in silence. Time for truth would come. It always did, but not yet. Not yet. The mockery did not stop. If anything, it grew worse. Over the following days, word spread quickly through the ship. The humans had a collection of ridiculous stories, fairy tales about heroes and monsters, legends about warriors who could not be killed. Every species on the Vigilant Star wanted to hear them and laugh. Dany tried to avoid the mess hall, but he could not avoid his duties. He was a communications officer, which meant he spent most of his time on the bridge, surrounded by aliens who had all heard about the human myths. They would smirk at him when he walked past. They would whisper jokes to each other in their own languages. Sometimes they did not even bother to whisper. The tablet made its rounds through the ship. Different species took turns reading the stories aloud, each one finding new reasons to laugh. The tale of King Arthur and his knights, the story of Beowulf fighting the monster, the legend of the samurai who dueled 100 enemies. Humans cannot even survive a simple fall, Draxon's soldier said one evening, but they expect us to believe. One of them killed a dragon with a sword. Another added a piece of metal against a flying creature that breathes fire. Their entire history is a lie, said Fran, who had become the leader of this daily entertainment. They must be deeply ashamed of being so weak. Why else would they invent such obvious fantasies? Danny stopped eating in the mess hall entirely. He took his meals in his quarters alone, reading the stories his grandmother had given him and trying not to let the alien steal him from his heart. But someone else on the ship was paying attention. A was young for a Veli, barely past her coming-of-age ceremony. She served as a junior communications officer, which meant she sometimes worked alongside Danny on the bridge. Unlike the other aliens, she did not laugh at him. She did not mock the human stories. She simply watched, curious and quiet. Why IRA had noticed something the others had missed. While everyone was focused on Danny and his tablet, no one paid any attention to the older human woman who sat alone in the corner of the mess hall. Every evening, Doc Carla Bennett, the name meant nothing to Yura at first. The woman looked ordinary enough, gray hair, weathered face, old scars that could have come from anywhere. She wore no rank insignia, which was unusual on a military vessel. Her file listed her as a civilian advisor on special assignment, but it did not say what she was advising about or who had assigned her. Yura was curious by nature. It was both her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. She could not leave a mystery alone. One night after her shift ended, she sat down at her personal terminal and began to dig. The basic personnel files told her nothing useful. Carla Bennett, age 54, born on Earth in a city called Houston, served in the Coalition Marines for 30 years before retiring. That was all. No mention of battles, no mention of commendations, no mention of why she was on this ship. But Yura knew how to look deeper. She had friends in Coalition intelligence, friends who owed her favors. She sent a carefully worded message and waited. The response came 2 hours later. It was marked with the highest security classification had ever seen. She opened it with trembling hands. What she read made her stop breathing. Carla Bennett was not just a retired Marine. She was one of the most decorated soldiers in human history. At the Battle of Nexus Prime, the Keth Dominion had launched a surprise attack on a human colony. 12,000 civilians were trapped in the main settlement with no way to escape. The only route to the evacuation ships led through a narrow corridor in the mountains, and the Kath were coming from every direction. A small unit of human Marines was sent to hold the corridor while the civilians fled. 20 soldiers against an army. The battle lasted 9 hours. One by one the Marines fell. The Kath kept coming, wave after Wave and the humans kept dying, but they did not retreat, they did not surrender, they held the line. After 6 hours, only 5 Marines remained. After 8 hours, only 2. After 9 hours, only 1. Carla Bennett, Yura, watched the footage with her hearts pounding in her chest. The classified file contained recordings from the battle captured by automatic systems that had survived the fighting. She saw a human woman standing in a corridor filled with bodies, Kef bodies, Marine bodies, blood everywhere, smoke and fire, and the constant sound of weapons. Carla was wounded, badly wounded. Yura could see the injuries even through the poor quality of the recording. A deep cut across her shoulder, burns on her arms, a wound her side that should have killed her. But she was still standing still, fighting. Her ammunition ran out. Yura watched her throw aside her rifle and draw a knife, a simple blade less than a foot long, nothing compared to the claws and teeth of the Kes. She fought with the knife for another hour. Yura watched her kill enemy after enemy, moving with a speed and ferocity that seemed impossible for a wounded human. The Cath were larger, stronger, and there were so many of them, it did not matter. She kept fighting. The knife broke. Era saw it happen. The blade snapped against Keith's armor, leaving Carla with nothing but a handle. She threw the handle at the nearest enemy and charged with her bare hands. The recording became harder to watch after that. Era saw the human woman fighting with fists and elbows and teeth. She saw her get knocked down and get back up again and again and again. The Kef could not believe it. Could see their confusion even through the footage. Why would she not stay down? Why would she not die? The final frame of the recording showed coalition reinforcements arriving at the corridor. They found Carla unconscious on the ground, surrounded by 37 Cath corpses. She was still breathing barely. Her body was broken in a dozen places. She had lost more blood than most species could survive, but she was alive. And the evacuation ships had escaped. 12,000 civilians survived because one human woman refused to die. The file contained more information, awards, commendations, the personal thanks of the Velry High Council. Carla Bennett had received the Star of Valor, the highest honor the coalition could give. She was famous among those who knew that classified truth, a legend, a living. Sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. For days she had watched Commander Thran and the other aliens mock human stories they had laughed at, tales of warriors fighting impossible odds. They had called such stories fantasies and lies. And every night, while they laughed, one of those impossible warriors sat quietly in the corner eating her meal alone. Yura did not know what to do with this information. Part of her wanted to tell everyone immediately. Part of her wanted to keep it secret, but she knew one thing for certain: the aliens had no idea who they were dealing with. And sooner or later they would find out. Spent 2 days trying to decide what to do. She could not stop thinking about what she had seen. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the footage from Nexus Prime, a single human standing against an army, fighting until there was nothing left to fight with, refusing to fall even when her body should have given up long ago. She started watching Carla more carefully in the mess hall. The older woman never spoke to anyone. She ate her meals alone, always at the same corner table, always facing the door. Her eyes moved constantly, tracking everyone who entered and left. It was the habit of someone who had spent a lifetime expecting danger. The other aliens did not notice. They were too busy entertaining themselves with Danny and LT Unk and GTY's mythology tablet. But Yura noticed, and the more she watched, the more she understood. Carla was not ignoring the mockery. She was waiting for what Yura did not know, but there was patience in those dark eyes, the patience of a hunter who knows exactly when to strike. On the third evening, Yura decided to tell Commander Thran what she had discovered. Perhaps if he knew who Kala was, he would stop the mockery. Perhaps he would show some respect. She never got the chance. That night, though, mess hall was more crowded than usual. The ship was only 2 days away from the combat zone, and everyone was restless. Soldiers from every species gathered to eat and talk and try not to think about the battle ahead. Thran stood in the center of the room with Danny and LT Unk and GTY's tablet in his hand. A large crowd surrounded him. He had found a new story to mock. Listen to this, he announced, his voice carrying over the noise. Human soldier carried his wounded friend across 20 m of enemy territory. He did not stop to rest. He did not stop to eat. He carried him through mountains and rivers and forests with enemies chasing them the entire way. He paused. For a fact, his yellow eyes bright with amusement. The human was wounded himself. Fran continued. He had been shot twice. He had a broken leg, but he did not stop. He carried his friend for 3 days until they reached safety. Crowd laughed. Kasich slapped his hand against the table. 3 days with a broken leg, the Draxon said, carrying another body. Human bones would shatter under such strain. Human muscles cannot sustain that effort. Another alien agreed. This is not mythology. This is stupidity. Benny sat at a table near the edge of the crowd. He had tried to avoid these gatherings, but tonight there was nowhere else to go. He kept his head down, staring at his food, trying to pretend he could not hear. But Tran noticed him. Young human, Commander called out, come tell us about your people's impossible heroes. Explain how your fragile species accomplishes these miracles. Danny did not move. Come, then repeated, his voice harder. Now are you afraid? Slowly Danny stood up. He walked toward the center of the room, feeling the eyes of every alien upon him. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. What do you want me to say? He asked quietly. I want you to admit the truth, Fran said. Your species is weak. Your myths are lies. You invented these stories because reality was too painful to accept. Danny shook his head. You do not understand. Then explain it to me. The stories are about courage, Danny said, his voice growing stronger. They are about what we can become when something matters more than our own survival. They teach us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Thran laughed. Ordinary people cannot carry bodies for 3 days with broken bones. Ordinary people cannot fight armies alone. This is simple biology. You have never seen what humans can do. Danny shot back. You sit here and laugh at our stories, but you have never watched a human fight for something they love. You have no idea what we are capable of. The room went quiet. No one expected the young ensign to fight back. Thram leaned down until his face was inches from Danny and LT Unk and GTY's. His yellow eyes were cold. And you have seen this? The commander asked softly. You have witnessed these miracles. Yourself, Danny hesitated. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to defend his species with first-hand experience, but he could not lie. No, he admitted, I have not. Fran smiled. And your words mean nothing. He turned away, dismissing Danny. Like a child, the crowd began to laugh. Again. Danny stood frozen, his fists clenched, his eyes stinging with shame. And then a voice cut through the noise. He has not seen it, the voice said. But I have. Everyone turned. Carla Bennett was standing at her corner table. She looked small compared to the aliens around her. Her gray hair was messy, her face was lined with age, but there was something in her eyes that made the laughter die. I have seen humans do things your species would call impossible. She continued, walking slowly toward the center of the room. Her voice was calm and steady, like a river that is carved through stone. I have seen them carry wounded friends through enemy fire. I have seen them fight when every calculation said they should be dead. I have seen them face nightmares worse than any dragon in those stories. Thran straightened to his full height, looking down at the old woman with contempt. Words, he said. Your species is full of word stories and speeches and dreams, but when the real fighting comes, you break. Carla stopped directly in front of him. She was so much smaller. The top of her head barely reached his chest, but she did not seem small. She seemed like something ancient and dangerous. Then, let me show you something that is not words, she said, slowly, deliberately. She removed her jacket. The scars were everywhere, deep grooves cut across her arms like claw marks. Burns covered her shoulders, the skin still puckered and discolored after years of healing. A thick ropey line ran from her collarbone to her ribs, the remnant of a wound that should have been fatal. The alien stared in silence. Even Thran could not find words. Allah held up her arms, letting everyone see. Mexus Prime, she said. Simply, 9 hours holding a corridor against the K-17 confirmed kills after my ammunition ran out, 3 more after my knife broke. She lowered her arms and looked directly at Thran. Do you want to see the official report? I can arraign it, or you can keep laughing at stories you do not understand. No one was laughing now. The mess hall had gone completely silent, and Carla Bennett stood at the center waiting for an answer. The silence in the mess hall was so complete that Carla could hear the hum of the ship's engines through the walls. Every eye was fixed on her. VRY Draxon and a dozen other species stood frozen, staring at the scars that covered her body. Commander Thran had not moved. His yellow eyes were fixed on the thick line that ran across Carla's ribs, the wound that should have killed her. For the first time since Danny had met him, the Velry commander seemed uncertain. Nexus Prime, Thran said slowly, I have heard of that battle. Have you? Carla asked. What have you heard? A human colony was attacked. The CAF overwhelmed the defenses. There was heavy loss of life. Carla nodded. 12,000 civilians were trapped in the settlement. The only way out was through a mountain pass. 20 Marines were sent to hold the corridor while the evacuation ships loaded. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. 20 against an army. We knew we were going to die. Every single one of us knew, but we went anyway. Do you know why? Thran did not answer. Because those 12,000 people needed time. Carla continued. Because our deaths could buy hours. Because that is what humans do when something matters more than survival. She began to walk slowly Among the gathered soldiers, no one moved out of her way. They simply stood and watched as this small, scarred woman passed between them like a ghost. "You think our myths are foolish," she said. "You laugh at stories of warriors who fought against impossible odds, of heroes who held the line when all hope was lost, of ordinary people who became extraordinary because someone needed them to be." She stopped in front of a young Draxan soldier who had been among the loudest mockers. "Those stories are not fantasies," she said, looking directly into his dark eyes. "They are instructions. They are not about what humans wish we could do. They are about what we actually do, wrapped in symbols. So we remember them," the Draxan said. Nothing, he could not seem to look away from her. Carla resumed walking, her voice carrying through the silent room. "The dragon is not a literal beast. It is the obstacle that seems impossible to overcome. The monster on the mountain is not a creature. It is the fear that lives inside us, the voice that says we cannot win. When humans tell stories about heroes slaying dragons, we are teaching our children that the impossible is not truly impossible. We are showing them that fear can be conquered." She stopped near Danny and LT Unk and GTY's table. The young ensign was watching her with wide eyes. "When we sing songs about warriors who held the line until death, we are preparing the next generation to hold their own lines. When we tell tales of soldiers carrying wounded friends through enemy territory, we are teaching them that love is stronger than pain, that loyalty matters more than survival." She turned to face Commander Thran again. "Every culture creates the stories it needs," she said. "The Valkyrie have tales of great hunters who conquered wild worlds. The Draxan sing of ancestors who survived the burning of their homelands. These stories are not lies, they are lessons." Thran remained silent, his expression unreadable. "You wonder why humans cling to myths of courage and sacrifice," Carla continued. "It is because we are small. We are fragile. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Predators hunted us. Diseases ravaged us. The climate shifted without warning, and entire populations died." She held up her scarred hands. "We had no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom. Our skin offered no protection. Our bodies healed slowly and broke easily by every logical measure. We should have gone extinct at H100 times over." Her voice dropped lower, but somehow it carried even further. "The only thing that kept humanity alive was the stubborn refusal to accept death. When it came for us, we survived because we would not stop fighting. We survived because we helped each other, carried each other, died for each other. We survived because of exactly the qualities you have been mocking." She pointed at the tablet still clutched in Fran's hand. "Those myths you find so amusing, they are the reason my species exists. They are the stories our ancestors told around fires while the darkness pressed in from every side. They are the promises we made to each other that we would never give up, never surrender, never stop fighting as long as there was something worth fighting for." She stepped closer to Thran, close enough that she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. "They are the reason I held that corridor at Nexus Prime. When my friends died around me, I heard their voices telling the old stories. When my ammunition ran out, I remembered the tales of warriors who fought with their hands. When my body wanted to Quit, I thought of all the heroes who had faced worse and kept going. Her voice was barely above a whisper now. But everyone heard it. 12,000 people made it to those evacuation ships. 12,000 mothers and fathers and children who are alive today because a handful of humans believed in myths because we had been raised on stories that told us ordinary people could do extraordinary things. She stepped back from Thrawn and looked around at the assembled aliens. You can laugh at our stories if you want. You can call them primitive and foolish, but when the KE come, and they are coming, you will see what those stories create. You will see humans fight in ways that your logic says are impossible. You will see us carry each other through fire. You will see us hold lines that cannot be held. She retrieved her jacket from where she had dropped it and pulled it back on, covering her scars once more. And maybe then you will understand why we tell tales of dragons and heroes. Maybe then you will see that those stories were never fantasies. She looked at Thrawn one last time. They were prophecies. The silence stretched on. Carla walked back toward her corner table, her footsteps the only sound in the room. She sat down, picked up her fork, and resumed eating as if nothing had happened. The aliens remained frozen. Danny stared at the old woman with tears in his eyes. Commander Thrawn stood motionless, the tablet hanging limply in his hand. No one said a word. From the first time, they were all thinking about the stories in a different way, not as jokes, not as fantasies, thought as warnings, as promises, thought as the truth. The silence lasted a long time. Soldiers slowly began to drift away from the center of the mess hall, returning to their tables with their eyes down. Energy of the room had changed completely. Where there had been laughter and mockery, there was now something heavy and thoughtful. Commander Thrawn remained standing. Carla had left him. The tablet was still in his hand, but he was not looking at it. He was staring at the old woman, eating alone in the corner, and his expression was impossible to read. Danny did not move either. He watched the commander, waiting for a reaction. Part of him expected Thrawn to become angry. Part of him expected more insults. What happened next surprised everyone. Eurus stepped forward. She had been standing near the edge of the crowd, clutching her own personal device. Her hands were trembling slightly. Commander, she said, her voice clear despite her nervousness. Do you know who that woman is? Thrawn turned to look at the young communications officer. She said her name, Sergeant Major Carla Bennett. That is not all she is. Eurus said, I found her classified file 2 days ago. I was going to tell you, but she hesitated, then transferred a file to the main display screen on the wall. Everyone turned to look. The screen filled with official coalition documents, service records, commendations, awards, and in the center, a simple photograph of a younger Carla Bennett standing at attention, full dress uniform with more medals on her chest than most soldiers earned in 3 lifetimes. Star of Valor, someone whispered, the highest honor in the coalition, awarded for actions at Nexus Prime. Eurus said, there is footage. She started the video. The quality was poor, captured by damaged sensors in the middle of a battle, but the images were clear enough. A narrow mountain corridor filled with smoke and fire, bodies everywhere, Cath and human alike, and in the center of it all, a single woman standing among the dead. The aliens watched in silence as Carla Bennett fought They saw her fire until her rifle was empty. They saw her draw her knife and charge into a crowd of enemies. 3 times her size, they saw her take wounds that would have killed any or Draxon, wounds that should have dropped her instantly died. She did not drop. The video showed her fighting for what felt like hours. Every time the Cath knocked her down, she got back up. Every time they thought she was finished, she found something else to fight with. When her knife broke, she used her hands. When her hands were too damaged to make fists, she used her elbows and knees and teeth. The final minute of the footage was almost unbearable to watch. Carla was barely standing. Blood covered every inch of her body. She was surrounded by Cath corpses, so many that the new attackers had to climb over their own dead to reach her. And still she would not stop. The video ended with coalition ships arriving at the corridor. Soldiers in full combat gear rushed in expecting to find nothing but bodies. Instead, they found one human woman, unconscious but alive, surrounded by the evidence of what she had done. 37 Cath dead, 1 human still breathing. The screen went dark. No one spoke for a very long time. Then Commander Fran moved. He walked slowly across the mess hall toward Carla's corner table. Every eye followed him. The room was so quiet that his footsteps echoed. Carla looked up from her meal as he approached. Her face showed no emotion. She simply waited. Thran stopped in front of her table. For a moment he just stood there looking down at the old woman who had once fought an army alone. Then slowly he placed his fist over his chest. It was the traditional salute of the very warrior caste, the gesture of one fighter acknowledging another as an equal. In all his years of service, Thran had never made this salute to any human. He bowed his head. "Forgive me," he said quietly. "I did not understand." Carla watched him without speaking. One by one, the other aliens followed. Kessex placed his clawed hand over his heart in the Draxon gesture of respect. Other species made their own signs of honor. Within minutes, every soldier in the mess hall had acknowledged Carla Bennett as what she was, a warrior, a hero, a living legend. Carla set down her fork and stood up slowly. She looked around at the aliens honoring her, and for the first time something softened her hard eyes. "I do not need your respect," she said. "I did not hold that corridor to become famous. I did it because it needed to be done." She pointed across the room to Danny, who was standing frozen near his table with tears running down his face. "That young man needs your respect," she said, "and the next human you meet needs it, and the one after that, because we are all carrying the same myths in our hearts. We all grew up on the same stories. Given the right moment and the right reason, any one of us could become what those stories describe." She picked up her jacket and walked toward the door. Every alien in the room stood at attention as she passed. "The Cath are still out there," she said without turning around. "When we face them, I need soldiers beside me who understand what humans are capable of. Now you know." She left the mess hall in silence. That night Danny found a gift outside his quarters. It was a small book bound in leather with pages made of real paper. He opened it carefully and found a collection of human mythology, the same stories the aliens had been mocking for days. A note was tucked inside the front cover. It was written in Velry script, but Danny could read it. It said, "So that I may learn from your ancestors' wisdom. Thank you for being Patient with my ignorance, the note was. Signed with Commander Thran's personal seal. Danny held the book against his chest and cried. The Vigilant Star arrived at the combat zone the next morning. Soldiers prepared for battle. The usual ways, they checked their weapons, reviewed their assignments, said quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in, but something was different. Now, in the mess hall, aliens and humans sat together. They shared meals and conversation, and for the first time, they shared stories. A VI soldier told the tale of his ancestors' great hunt. Draxon sang a song about the burning of her home world, and Danny sitting at a table surrounded by aliens who had mocked him just days before told him about Achilles and Beowulf and the 300 Spartans. They did not laugh. They listened. Out in somewhere in the corner, Carla Bennett ate her meal. Silent, watching the young soldiers prepare themselves for what was coming. The myths were doing their work. The impossible was becoming possible. And when the KTH finally came, the soldiers of the Vigilant Star would be ready to show them exactly what that meant.